The students who would be the best at running the school are not the ones who want to run it the most. What would actually happen if students run the school? Good morning, school. Today's schedule has been officially changed. The student-run school moves first period to 8:30, and the answer is going to surprise you in ways you are not prepared for. So real quick, before we get into this, I need you to genuinely ask yourself something. Not as a joke, not as a hypothetical, but as a real question that you have probably never actually sat down and thought through. Not the version where everything goes perfectly and there is some beautiful lesson at the end about leadership and growth. The real version. The version where actual teenagers, who can barely remember to charge their phones, are now in charge of a building full of other teenagers who also cannot remember to charge their phones. And somehow, adults have convinced themselves that this would be a disaster. Which is funny because have you seen how adults run schools? For real bro here, where we say what no one else will. Now stay with me because what I'm about to break down is not just about school. What we are really talking about is power. Who gets it? Who deserves it? And what happens the moment someone hands it to a person who was never supposed to have it? And the answer is going to surprise you in ways you are not prepared for. Shh. Because here's the thing nobody is saying out loud. The reason adults panic at this idea is not because students would fail. It is because there is a very real chance they would not. Part 1. The morning announcements nobody asked for. Picture this. It is 7:45 in the morning. The school intercom crackles on. And instead of the usual robotic voice telling you about the bake sale nobody cares about, you hear a 15-year-old with way too much confidence and no filter say, "Good morning, school. Today's schedule has been officially changed. First period is canceled. Lunch is now at 10. And anyone wearing a lanyard ironically will be sent home." And you are sitting there thinking, okay, this is already better. But here is where the first prediction break hits you. You assumed the first thing students would do is get rid of all the rules. Skip class, run around the hallways, turn the gym into a concert venue. That is what every adult who has never trusted a teenager assumes would happen. But studies on youth leadership programs, student government experiments, and participatory school models have actually found something completely different. When students are given real authority, and not just the fake kind where they vote on a theme for prom, they get serious fast, uncomfortably fast. Because here is what nobody tells you about teenagers. The reason they seem chaotic and disrespectful and impossible to manage is not because they lack the ability to follow structure. It is because nobody has ever given them a structure they actually believed in. The second they are the ones building it, everything changes. So your hypothetical student-run school does not immediately collapse into chaos. In the first hour, a committee has already formed. There is a kid with a whiteboard. There is another kid who is already arguing with the kid with the whiteboard. And there is a third kid who has appointed himself mediator even though nobody asked him to. Sound familiar? Because that is literally just a regular school administration meeting, just louder. And this is where things start getting much bigger than you expected. Part 2. The part where they actually fix things. Okay, so here's the uncomfortable truth that adults do not want to hear. If students ran school for a day, there is a genuinely terrifying list of things they would immediately fix. Not because they are smarter than teachers, but because they are inside the experience every single day and nobody has ever asked them what is wrong. First thing to go, standardized testing schedules. Not because students are lazy, because students are the only ones who actually know that having 3 major exams in 1 week while also doing extracurriculars and also going through, the emotional chaos of being a human teenager is genuinely insane. Adults who designed that system graduated years ago. They do not live inside it anymore. Students do. Second thing, the lunch period. Every student has known for years that 23 minutes is not enough time to eat, stand in line, find a seat, eat again, and still survive the next 2 hours of class. Somehow this information has never made it to whoever schedules these things. Third, the fact that school starts at 7 in the morning when every single piece of scientific research on adolescent sleep says that teenagers are biologically wired to fall asleep later and wake up later. Not because they are irresponsible, because their bodies literally work differently. And adults looked at that research, said that is fascinating, and then kept scheduling first period at 7 a.m. So the student-run school moves first period to 8:30, and suddenly attendance goes up. Test scores improve. Teachers are less exhausted because their students are actually awake. And somewhere, an adult who has been saying, "Kids these days just don't care," is deeply confused. But here is the part that quietly creeps in and ruins the celebration. The first hidden problem shows up around noon. Because fixing things is actually very hard. And some of the people who were loudest about changing everything are now realizing that running something is genuinely different from criticizing something. The kid who wanted shorter class periods realizes that you still have to cover the same material. The one who wanted free periods built into the schedule realizes that without supervision, the free periods become genuinely dangerous. The one who said teachers are too strict spends 20 minutes trying to get a single classroom to settle down and then silently respects every teacher who has ever done this for 30 years. The thing that was helping them is also making them uncomfortable. Part 3. The moment the plan eats itself. This is the part of the story people do not include when they tell the cute version of this concept. Because somewhere around 1 in the afternoon, the student-run school hits a wall that has nothing to do with logistics and everything to do with human nature. There are now 3 groups. The group trying to make real changes and taking this seriously. The group that realized this is hard and quietly checked out. And the group that was never going to engage with this, and is now using the lack of normal supervision to do things that will absolutely be mentioned in the next school board meeting. And this is not a failure of the students, this is just people being people. Because the truth that nobody says about any institution, school or otherwise, is that the biggest threat to a new system is never the outsiders who oppose it. It is the people on the inside who stop believing in it the moment it becomes inconvenient. That is not a teenager problem. That is a human problem. It happens in companies. It happens in governments. It happens in group chats that start with 15 people and end with 3 people and 1 person on mute. Student council president, who has been running on pure adrenaline and idealism since 7:45, is now sitting in the main office at 1:30 p.m., looking at a list of problems that did not exist this morning and realizing something devastating. The system that felt unfair from the outside is still complicated from the inside. Just differently complicated. And this is where the trap closes. Because you thought being in charge meant being free. But being in charge means being responsible for everything, including the things you did not choose and the problems you did not create. And suddenly the kid who spent 3 years complaining about the principal has a small, quiet, horrible moment of empathy, which honestly might be the most educational thing that happens all day. You are now trapped inside something you thought you wanted. Hard forward. The contradicted section nobody saw coming. Here's the biggest twist in this entire experiment, and I need you to actually hold this one because it is genuinely uncomfortable. The students, who would be the best at running the school, are not the ones who want to run it the most. Stay with me. The loudest voices in any revolution are almost never the best administrators afterward. The people with the most passion for tearing something down are rarely the ones with the patience to build something better in its place. This is not an opinion. This is just observable across basically every large-scale change in human history. The people who are great at identifying problems are usually different from the people who are great at solving them. And very rarely does one person do both well. So the hypothetical student government that gets handed the school for a day is immediately dominated by the loudest, most confident, most politically energized students. Which sounds great, until you realize that the kid who would actually be incredible at scheduling, resource allocation, and making sure everyone has what they need is sitting quietly in the back of the room because nobody asked her and she does not volunteer. She is also the one who noticed 3 hours ago that they forgot to account for students with accessibility needs in the new schedule, and she sent a message about it that was read and not responded to. And this is where the real self-sabotage happens. Not through malice, not through laziness, but through the very human tendency to center the loudest people and ignore the most useful ones, which, if you look around, is also exactly what the adult-run version of this school does. For real, bro. The thing that was supposed to be completely different is making the exact same mistake. There is one final truth nobody saw coming. Part 5. The reason this was never really about school. Alright, here is where we get honest. This entire conversation, everything from the chaotic morning announcements to the exhausted student council president, to the girl in the back who nobody listened to, none of this was actually. And what power does to people the moment they finally have it. Because every generation grows up watching the people in charge and thinking, I could do that better. And sometimes they are right. And sometimes they sit down in the chair and feel the weight of it for the first time and realize that the person who was sitting there before was not lazy or stupid or evil. They were just doing an impossible job with incomplete information. and too many people wanting completely different things. And that realization does not make the broken things less broken. It does not mean the sleep schedule should stay at 7 a.m. It does not mean the lunch period is actually fine. It does not mean the tests are reasonable. Those things are genuinely wrong and they should be changed, and the students who identified them were completely correct. But the change requires something that rebellion cannot provide on its own. It requires the boring, unglamorous, deeply unsexy work of sitting in a room and making decisions that make nobody completely happy, and then defending those decisions to people who are going to be upset no matter what you choose. Which is why the real lesson from a day of student-run school is not that students can do it better, and it is not that adults have it figured out. The real lesson is that authority is not the problem and freedom is not the solution. The problem is that the people with the experience are not listening to the people inside the experience, and the people inside the experience do not always have access to the full picture. You know what that means? It means the actual answer is the thing everyone says, but nobody does. Talk to each other. Actually involve the people who are affected by the decisions in making the decisions. Not as a gesture, not as a PR move, but as a structural requirement. And here is the callback that is going to hit different now. Remember that girl in the back who sent the message about accessibility and was ignored. She is not a fictional character. She exists in every system, every workplace, every government, every group chat. And the reason things stay broken is almost never because nobody knows how to fix them. It is because the people who know how to fix them are not in the room, or they are in the room and they are being ignored. And if you think about it, that was the real problem with the school all along. Not the rules, not the schedule, not even the 7 a.m. start time. It was the fact that the people most affected by the institution had the least amount of say in how it was run. And somehow it took a chaotic, hilarious, slightly disastrous, hypothetical day of student governance to make that obvious. Damn, that changes everything. So drop a comment. Tell me honestly, if students at your school ran things for a day, what is the first thing that would be fixed? And what is the first thing that would immediately go wrong? And before you answer, be real with yourself about which category you personally would fall into. The one actually fixing things, the one who checked out after lunch, or the one they're going to mention at the next school board meeting. And if somehow you watch this entire video about a school you are not even in and still learn something, maybe just maybe, you are exactly the kind of person who should probably stick around. Not because I am asking you to, just because you have clearly got nothing better to do.